Welcome into another episode of the Dynasty Dogs, which is my dog's favorite podcast. Eventually, I'm going to get this intro correct. It's taking me some time. Rich is not here with me this evening. He has a family function to go to. But in the doghouse today, he is none other than Ben McCown of the Dynasty DNA crew. Ben, how you doing tonight?
Doing great. I'm doing great, Mike. Glad to be here.
So tonight we are obviously going to be talking about in the Dog Bites segment, or That Bites segment, with the trades of Amari Cooper and Davante Adams. But we have a very interesting three-round rookie draft. I can't even say it. I'm so frazzled about this whole thing. It's gotten me to the point where I can't even speak about it. I'm so excited. But before we get into all that, tell us a little about what you got going on, what you do over at Dynasty DNA, and what brought you into the Dynasty limelight.
Yeah. I guess I'll first share that fantasy football has always been a passion of mine. I've been playing for now 14 years at least, but I really got into Dynasty within the last 2 years and kind of share my story that I've told people that, paternity with my first daughter was like the time when I really dove deep into getting into kind of the deepest part of Dynasty fantasy football. And, doing a level of research, getting connected with the DNA guys earlier this year. I just got connected with them via the Discord. I was just looking around for various fantasy football Discords and found the Dynasty DNA and got connected with TJ and the guys and just had an interest, connected with the guys over Discord and talking different fantasy news and things like that I just figured, hey, I've been doing this for long enough. I've got an interest. I also have a little bit of a area of interest as well as far as injuries go, being a physical therapist myself. So, it's always been an area that I've wanted to a hobby that I've wanted to take to the next level. So that's kind of something I've been doing within the last 6 months. And I've been writing some articles for the DNA guys. I've been trying to be a little bit more active on X, just posting some more things, and it gets tough. Life gets a little bit in the way, but it's been a lot of fun.
So I will say a couple things because you brought up a couple good things here. TJ and the guys over at the Dynasty DNA, I think I regularly shout them out on this podcast because how cool and good and just an amazing job they do over there in general. And you have been an awesome addition to that, especially just in the Discords. And I heard you on Under the Helmets podcast, the podcast I've been on as well. So you did a great job there.
Thanks, Mike.
And it's also funny to hear you said with the paternity and you fell into the degeneration of Dynasty that we're all involved in. Similar thing for myself. I got hurt, actually, and I had to get back surgery, and you're a physical therapist, so that's another reason why I'm bringing this up.
Yeah.
So I was just not working for about 1.5 2 years, and after surgeries. So I fell into the hole myself in that, film grinding and, just trying to talk shop with anybody that would listen in Dynasty. And that's how this podcast formed. So it's always something that drives us into this madness of Dynasty. And it's always something where we have too much time on our hands, unfortunately.
Yeah.
What have you been working on recently with DNA?
Yeah, so recently I just released an article kind of my review of the first quarter of the NFL season. I've kind of decided that throughout the season I'm going to be dropping quarterly an article about where my thoughts are at on kind of the players to look at, somebody who may be on the rise, somebody who you may want to fade on. The most recent article I talked about, players like Rashee Rice, perfect dynasty builder on a team. Nico Collins, even with the injury right now, just a great player right now to put as a contender, for later in the season, even as a rebuilder to try and buy low on right now during the injury. But just trying to, come up with different information that potentially the community wants and the community is interested in. Definitely very active, like you said, on Discord. Anybody that asks questions, I think that's what's great about the DNA Discord is so many people go on there having questions, and people are always willing to help and provide information. There's no judgment based on what your build of your team looks like, but more so that we and the rest of the DNA family, honestly, not just the guys, but everybody that contributes wants to help whoever has a question, whoever needs it.
Yeah, for sure. I think that their Discord is probably the best that I've been on. Obviously, I am somewhat active on there. Discord for me uh, can be a lot because I feel like I dove too far into Discord and I feel like I'm getting too many notifications, so my brain starts to scramble a little bit. Um, I do like the idea of quarterly articles, like you mentioned, because I feel like every quarter we start to see different trends,
Absolutely.
especially in Dynasty, in values and stuff like that. So I really like that idea. Is there anybody else that you've like to talk about? Since you just mentioned the
Yeah.
article, is there somebody else that's trended in your
A
interest?
couple of players actually. Trying to think back to my article, who I put on there. I did put on there Jaden Daniels. Just I think
It's
everybody's
a
been
good one.
enamored right now with just his blow up recently, but I do think there's a lot of staying power in his game, and just that he's shown us a lot that we really want to see from a young quarterback between his accuracy, his big upside with running and being able to rush the ball when the team needs to get a first down. Um, I think he is the real deal. I think Caleb also has proven. I didn't. The article was released before this last weekend, and I think we all saw what we wanted to see from Caleb finally. I
Hmm.
think the Bears are starting to come to form. The offense is starting to click a little bit more, and definitely excited about those two guys. Obviously, Drake May this last weekend got to show a little bit of what he has to offer. But yeah, I think that the next quarter is going to offer a lot more when it comes to at least some of these rookies that are showing up. I don't really even know that I got a chance to talk about Malik Neighbors in that article, but I've just been in love with everything I've seen. I've seen from his game so far.
Yeah,
A little
he's
bit more
also
than
missed
Marvin.
what
I
the
think that's
past.
where you're going to
Yeah,
see in my rankings that uh, I have a little bit of Malik love over Marvin in this draft.
I will say, I think the offense as a whole in Arizona has been lackluster because Kyler hasn't really looked up to par as of lately, or what we had hoped, especially with the addition of Marvin Harrison Jr. Obviously,
Yeah,
um, but again, this is we're going to talk about it during the draft, but it's been a very impressive class so far, and we don't want to give too much away
yeah.
just yet because we'll get into that.
I guess I
Um,
wanted to add to that
but
additionally about what I'm doing with DNA, but
oh, sorry,
my
yeah.
and I didn't really bring it up myself, but as far as injuries and things like that, right? Like I think
Mm.
that's something that I have wanted to hone in on because being a physical therapist, that's something that does interest me. It's just really taking the time and pouring it into each individual player and what that brings with their fantasy stock. I mean, for
Mm.
me, not even as much fantasy related unless you're IDP. But I'm still recovering from the Aiden Hutchinson injury this last weekend.
I'm actually in a few IDP leagues. I don't have any Aiden Hutchinson as I would obviously like to. He just goes pretty high in an IDP
Yeah.
draft, believe it or not, because the dude's just a game
I
record.
mean, if
And
your league settings are set more towards a higher sack scoring, then he's going to go easily as the
yeah,
top three defensive lineman.
so the two leagues that I do IDP in, both give points for sack
Mm-hmm.
yardage, not just the sack. So he's always up there, and he's all. I get terrified. My buddy has him in our one league. I'm terrified to play him, just because of Aiden Hutchinson. Luckily, I mean not luckily. How do I want to put this? I guess good news for me. I won't have to worry about that
Yeah,
again this year because it was probably one of the most disgusting injuries I've seen this year. And
definitely.
speaking of injuries, I'm sure you've had your work cut out for you just watching all these
Yeah,
injuries this year because I feel like this year has been just a flux of just
yeah.
hamstrings and concussions and stuff like
It's
that.
it's
Is
hard
this
to know.
something out of the normal you're noticing?
So when it comes to hamstring injuries, a lot of it has to do with conditioning. And the biggest thing that we would probably point to it, if we were to blame one thing, uh, would be the lack of a preseason. So It's not the lack of preseason games. Is all the teams have 3 preseason games, of course, except for the Hall of Fame game. But the problem with that is that a lot of coaches decide to sit their starters until potentially the last game, or maybe even not start some starters until the regular season, not giving them a lot of time to really get adjusted to the field. Of course, there is spring, there is training camp and everything that goes along with that, but it's not the same, and they still need the reps that they need. So, I think that's one thing that points towards hamstring injuries. And then as far as concussions go, personally, I actually don't know a lot when it comes or in regards to why the concussions have been worse this season. Of course, I think something that might be able to eke its way more into the NFL is the what's the new helmet called, or at least the
cushiony helmet. I forget what it's
or
called.
like the Halo
the
or
marshmallow
the Angel helmet. Basically, the new technology that they have with that. That obviously it's making its way towards protecting the players. And even though it looks funky to us fans, it is hopefully going to make a difference in being able to keep players on the field. But yeah it's been a really weird season for injuries.
Yeah, it has been. I don't remember. I feel like we say it every year, like these injuries have been sucky so far, but I feel like this actually might be the legitimate worst.
Yeah, and I mean, not only just that but I think it's affecting a lot of big stars, and that's why a lot of fantasy players are noticing it. I talked Christian McCaffrey, of course, now Nico Collins, Rashee Rice. The Rashee Rice injury, that was almost avoidable. Of course, as much as we all love Patrick Mahomes, could have also been pretty avoidable on a dumb play that could have just been avoided altogether. But
it's funny because Patrick Mahomes has been pretty disappointing in fantasy,
yes.
and then he just disappointed more by taking out a fantasy riser in Rashee Rice all in one, foul swoop. He just decided to ruin everything.
There goes the interception. There goes Rashee Rice's knee.
All right, so let's get into That Bite segment. That is our news and notes portion of the episode. And obviously we have to talk about the 2 biggest things this past week. We had Davante Adams traded to the Jets. Color me surprised on that one. I feel like we all saw this coming eventually. They had been kind of, leaking it for the past, since the offseason. Or not leaking it. What is it? Like kind of
rumoring,
hinting at it.
Yeah. So, yeah.
What did you think of that?
That has definitely been something that has been on the minds of a lot of fantasy players with what do we do with Davante Adams? What do we do with Aaron Rodgers? And now what do we do with Garrett Wilson?
Mm-hmm. And I also think Breece Hall is one of the most targeted running backs in football. And now you have another a major target earner in Davante Adams. Rest of season, this is going to be a close your eyes and hope for the best type of situation for everyone involved because to be honest with you, not including Dynasty, but rest of season fantasy, it would not shock me if Davante Adams outscores Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, that is definitely something I am, as the Garrett Wilson owner, I am worried about. I have him in a couple of money leagues, and definitely worried about that hole in my lineup every week. Yeah, as far as Breece Hall goes, where do you go as a rebuilder with this one? Because, before it was hold Breece Hall, he's the cornerstone of your offense. But now, do we see it as a piece that if you sell him for a couple firsts and you're good to go? A couple first plus?
For a rebuilder, I think you have to. I think because he's still he's obviously the receptions are going to go down, but he's such a dynamic playmaker that he could ruin your chances of getting the 101 if you're a rebuilder.
Absolutely.
Right? Especially at max points 4, because that kind of thing will ruin it because he's going to still put up points whether you bench him or not. Your points are going to be counted against you. I think he even still could finish as a top 15 running back in fantasy, and that's just going to ruin a lot of things for you.
Right.
Do you agree?
It's really right in the middle where you don't want it. It's not bad enough that you're like, okay, I'm clearly out on this guy, but also at the same time, he's not putting up top 3 numbers that you wanted to see out of Breece Hall.
I think you could get a couple firsts for him and tear down to maybe even a running back we haven't seen much of yet from this most recent class. Just throwing names out there like a Marshawn Lloyd.
Mm-hmm.
He's pretty cheap right now,
Jonathan
currently
Brooks
on
is
the
another one.
IR. Yeah, Jonathan
I
Brooks is
actually
another one. I think
traded Jonathan Brooks. No, I traded Brees Hall for Jonathan Brooks, a first and a 25 second a couple weeks ago on a rebuilder. And I felt like I did
so. That's
pretty good on that trade, but
Yeah, I could agree with that. That's essentially 2 firsts and a second for Brees.
yeah,
And if you're rebuilding, I think that's perfect because Jonathan Brooks, as much as we think as talented as he is right now, he might be in a timeshare because Chuba Hubbard looks solid. I don't think Chuba Hubbard's going to be the answer long term. He was a guy last week. We had a sell episode. I said sell him for any second you can if you're a rebuilder because this is not going to continue. We see this from Chuba Hubbard. He's a placeholder guy.
yeah.
He's the guy that's going to get you through 10 weeks and then you won't see him for a year and a half.
Yeah.
Right. So I think I like that move for Brees or moving away from Brees and Jonathan Brooks. I like that.
I will tell you, I tried to sell Brees for Drake London at a first, and the owner, he thought about it, but basically turned it down afterwards. If
that would have been golden. I think we talked about that. Did we talk about that one in the Discord?
I don't know that we did.
Somebody had something similar.
What was that?
Somebody had something similar then
Yeah.
because I think there was a similar conversation going on.
Yeah, I think if you're a rebuilder, you take Drake London in the first.
Always the wide receivers. Always the wide receivers. So actually, real quick, I wanted to touch on Garrett Wilson one more time. It's crazy to think that this happened now. Obviously, I think the Jets are going to try it as best as they can to push it all in. But Garrett Wilson has been extremely targeted and effective in fantasy the past 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden it's just like, oh, fuck that. We're bringing in Davante.
Yeah. I mean, it's clear that Davante is going to get more targets than Garrett Wilson. I think the question is that Garrett Wilson, or that you might have to ask yourself is, are there going to be different types of targets? Is Davante going to get the long targets and Garrett Wilson is going to get more of the midfield to short field? Because I think Rodgers and Wilson have built rapport. Clearly not as much rapport as Davante Adams and Aaron Rodgers, but you got to have a second mouth to feed. They're obviously going to be covering Davante Adams as the wide receiver one. So Garrett Wilson's going to get less coverage on the defense. So there's positives that you have to hope for Garrett Wilson, but the problem is it's a sell low time, and it's also probably just best to hold.
Yeah, I wouldn't sell him low. I have seen actually. I'm sorry, this happened right before that trade went down. I want to say like a week before. I saw Garrett Wilson go straight up for Brian Thomas Jr. Is that something? I think that's still too low in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean Brian Thomas Jr. is climbing, but I trust the prospect that Garrett Wilson was over the inconsistency of what Brian Thomas came into the draft with.
Agreed. I 100% agree. Let's get into the next one because this one I don't think is as effective to a lot of our fantasy relevant players on this roster. But Amari Cooper to the Bills is just fun all around, to be honest with you. I think Amari Cooper, I mean, I don't know. I would have to go back and look, but his fantasy start so far, but I could see him from week 8 on, because I think we're going to have a light week this week because it's going to be his first week in Buffalo. Week on being a borderline wide receiver 1 every week.
Yeah.
Or a borderline wide receiver 1 finish, not every week, but a finish for him.
So the game log for Amari Cooper has not been terrible as far as, let's see here, where his... Actually, no, he's been awful because of Deshaun Watson.
We could blame all that on Watson.
See, so wide receiver 48, wide receiver 44, wide receiver 58. Oh, hang on a second. That's going backwards. But week 3 was his only top 10 finish as a wide receiver 5 against the Giants. Everything else is basically past wide receiver 44 and beyond.
I mean, I think we can agree a lot of that has to do with Deshaun Watson, because that dude looks just absolutely awful. He was a guy I was telling people to sell at this offseason as for almost a borderline 2 seconds or a second. I was telling people to trade him for Michael Penix straight up if you could do that, because I'd rather re-roll and hope Michael Penix turns into something, right? But I think Amari Cooper could fill that Stephon Diggs role in Buffalo.
Yeah. I mean, the good part about the Amari Cooper situation is, as much as we were all hoping that Keon Coleman was going to turn into something, or unfortunately, we're not seeing a lot from Dalton Kincaid either. I think you're going to see just a direct love from Josh Allen right to Amari Cooper. The only thing with that is, of course, Joe Brady is very committed to the run, more so than probably the Jets are. So that does hurt in that sense, but I think Amari Cooper is going to do just fine.
Yeah, so do I. So this is actually funny. Rich, my co-host, was a big Keon Coleman guy. I was kind of just in the middle on him.
Yeah.
I was like, I can see a bright future for him, but I could also see this being a major work in progress. But then I was huge on Kincaid. It's been, believe it or not, he's a top 12 tight end right now in fantasy, which is just insane because it doesn't feel like it. Believe it or not, none of these
than Kincaid.
Yeah, exactly. This maybe this is hopium or whatever they call it, but maybe this actually helps Kincaid. I'm just hoping for anything at this point.
Yeah.
My biggest upset is Khalil Shakir, to be honest with you.
Yeah. It definitely hurts Shakir's opportunity to continue to be a trusted target for Allen and fantasy players. Yeah, I think at that point, the trusted fantasy assets on that team are, you still got to trust Kincaid, Josh Allen, James Cook, at that point, Amari Cooper. And beyond that, I don't know that you can trust anybody else.
This is actually a good question that just popped into my brain, and maybe I should have asked it about Davante, but we'll ask it about Cooper. Is he a trade target in Dynasty going forward as a contender? And what are you willing to give up for him?
I think before the trade, you could have gotten Cooper for 2 seconds, maybe at most at first. The problem is now you're having to pay more than that. And are there better guys who are going to pay out better long term? And actually, this was something that was talked about in the Discord a couple hours ago. But going after somebody like Jaden Reed, who's still hot, so his price is going to be still inflated. But I don't think we're going to see him go down from this. And then I think who was the other player that was being compared to him? But yeah, I mean, it's there to say just somebody who's going to have a lot more lasting power personally, because I don't know how much it's going to cost to get Cooper. And at that point, if you're contending, you might as well just want to throw more and get a better receiver out of it.
Yeah, I could agree with that. But there's a chance where Amari Cooper is on a team that is trying to rebuild. Now, couldn't really get what they wanted for Cooper pre-trade, right? Now they're saying to themselves, I could get a late first out of this. And I think I'd be pretty fair. I think that'd be some
first.
Yeah, I think you could get a late first for him still, because there is the age factor, right? There is the and even if I have to throw a sweetener on there as like a third, because I think a late first and a late third is something you could get done. Because to be honest, anything after like the 3-2 is a dart throw. And if I'm trying to win now and I believe my team is a top 11, 12 or 1-2 team, I guess you could say, I'm willing to throw that in for Amari Cooper in hopes that he could finish out this season for me.
Who do you see as a better buy as far as rest of season, Deontay Johnson or Amari Cooper?
Well, seeing as how Deontay's banged up right now, or allegedly,
yeah, I guess, we'll add that.
He's a trade target. I would still go, to believe it or not, I like Deontay, and that was a good buy in the preseason for me. I think his price has gone up slightly because they are, with Andy Dalton at the helm. Yeah. And he's still a little bit younger than Cooper. And I think there still is that stench of he's coming from Cleveland and he hasn't done anything.
Yeah.
I think there's somebody out there that will be willing to move him. But to me, the better buy right now would be Amari Cooper. I don't know if you agree.
Yeah. If Deontay Johnson was not banged up right now, I mean, obviously Godwin is right now the best bet in regards to if you had bought him prior to this blow up, great. But I would say probably Deontay Johnson personally, just because of what we've seen over the last couple of weeks before he got hurt.
That's fair.
But
I
fair. It's Amari being a very fair contender right now.
Yeah, I might even be over exaggerating with the fact that he could be a top 15 guy at the end of the season from now until the end of the season. Like, obviously, if you take weeks 1 through 5 or 1 through 6, he's not going to be a top 15 guy.
Yeah.
But from here on out, I could see him being a top 15 guy because we've seen what Josh Allen has been able to do with a guy like this.
We also saw what Deshaun Watson did with Amari Cooper at the end of last season, and it wasn't as bad as what this was at the beginning of this season.
I think Deshaun Watson essentially is what Ben Simmons is to basketball, and not in the creepy way, the piece of shit way. The more of I like being an athlete more than I like being a player.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I like the going out and hanging out and the parties and everything like that, like the limelight of everything. But being an actual athlete playing a sport, he's just like, oh, dude, I already made my money.
Yep.
That's what I see with him anyway. But real quick, I got to talk about our new sponsors, Couch Scouts. They've launched a brand new website where you can watch all the Devy players you want to see, all the IDP players you want to see. They're coming into the NFL soon. Nobody I know has IDP film out there that you can watch and scout. If you go over to their website in the link below, you use the promo code DAWGS, that is DAWGS, at checkout. You will get 15% off. Again, that is DAWGS in the link below, and you will get 15% off at checkout. And again, those guys are awesome. Nobody else has IDP film room, and you got to stay ahead, guys. You got to get ready and watch these Dynasty assets of the future. So check out couchscouts.com in the link below and use code DAWGS at checkout. So let's get into this draft. I was the gracious host here. Something I wouldn't have done if my co-host is here, and decided to give you the 101. And we kind of talked about it. Most of this draft is up in the air of what we did, but I think I know where you're going with this, unless you changed it on me. So who's your 101?
My 101 is CJ Stroud. So this one I think is very, very arguable right now. I did argue it with myself a little bit between 1 and 2. But CJ Stroud for me he surprised us all last season when he turned out to be the QB1 of that draft class. He is a great pocket passer. He does have a little bit of wheels, not as much as some of the other guys behind him. And he also has great weapons behind him with Houston. So Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Stephon Diggs, great receivers. And honestly, Joe Mixon has really stepped it up as far as being a great blanket for CJ Stroud in the backfield.
That was the Joe Mixon signing was a very, I wouldn't say underrated move by the Houston Texans, especially on that offense. I'm double checking something right now. Yeah. I believe I still have him yes, I still have CJ Stroud as my QB3 in Dynasty right now.
Yeah.
So I can't disagree at all with you taking him at the 101. So I like that move. I have the 102. This might be a shock to you because of the way things have gone lately. My pick at number 2 is going to be Caleb Williams, Chicago Bears quarterback. I can't throw away everything I saw in Caleb Williams in college. And it's starting to show in the NFL. Again, it was against the Jacksonville Jaguars, but it's in London. We had seen for the past few weeks that he's been playing a clean game. And that's what we want to see from a rookie quarterback. This offensive line's looking a little bit better. They're starting to use the running game a little bit better. DJ Moore, a guy I can't sing the praises higher of on this podcast. One of the most underrated fantasy assets in football. I believe in Caleb Williams going forward. He's currently my QB7 in Dynasty.
I like that, Mike. To me, it was almost 1A, 1B with him and Jaden.
Exactly. Is that your 103?
That is, Caleb is my 103 from the draft.
Aha. See, I was wondering what you had
So
there.
I have Jaden and then I have Caleb. So, but you could flip it both ways, but personally, I just really like Jaden.
Yeah.
That's who I had at 102.
So to be honest with you, this draft class, the 2024 QB class, picks 1 through 3, Caleb, Jaden, May, were all guys I saw as dynasty assets. Like, I think all three of those guys have top 12 dynasty upside, in my opinion. I had May ahead of Daniels, but obviously we've seen Jaden Daniels, and everything I saw in Jaden Daniels has been what is shown in the NFL. The outside the numbers passing, the deep ball accuracy, the Terry McLaurin resurgence, thank God. It has been so fun to watch him, and he's not even on pace to be like rookie of the year. He might even be an MVP candidate.
He keeps up the production that he's been having for sure. Even with losses against Baltimore and just still being able to keep his team competing in those games.
Yeah, see, the thing is, Baltimore is going to give everybody hell,
Oh, yeah.
to be honest. So that leaves me up at the 104. And again, I had the same issue at 2 and 3 as I have at 4 and 5. But I'm going to be taking another player from this class, and that is going to be Marvin Harrison Jr. At the 104. I still believe that Marv is going to be the guy in football, in dynasty, in fantasy football. It's just going to maybe take a little longer than we thought, obviously. That first week came out, what was it, 0.1 points or something like that, 1 point or something like that. He did start to have a resurgence, and now we have a concussion, right?
Yep.
So it hasn't been as pretty as we wanted. Like we mentioned earlier, Kyler hasn't been the QB that we've wanted right now. But I still think he's the diamond of this class.
I like Marv a lot as far as his future with the team. Arizona will pull it together. They invested a lot to get him there. So I think for anybody worried, you should know that he is going to hold a lot of value still going forward, no matter what.
I feel like I know where you're going at the 105.
Yeah, so at least if the conversation wasn't already on the podcast, because we did talk about this at some point, but Malik Neighbors is who I would have even taken at 104.
Yeah,
Because for
I
me,
figured that was going to be the case.
he is everything that the Giants need. I just listened to some information this morning that he has a 38% target share on the team, which is
Insane. Right?
insane. It's crazy numbers, monster. Even if you see him drop 10% by next season, he would still be getting a 28% target share on the team. And I think there was something to be said as far as the Giants' offense that this is really potentially the worst they could have. Right? They could draft a rookie QB underneath Daniel Jones. That rookie QB develops and usurps Daniel Jones. At this point, they build themselves better around Malik Neighbors. So I don't think, even if they do draft another great wide receiver behind him, he's still going to be the number one dog on his team. So
Yeah.
I love Malik. I've tried to buy him as early as I can during the early part of the season. I was able to get him for, I believe, a first, a second, and Christian Watson, which was pretty insane. Looking back at it now, knowing what we know Malik Neighbors is now. But yeah, I think it's another 1A, 1B situation. And you and I were talking about it earlier. The depth of this draft is just insane. A lot of us were looking at it at the beginning of the draft valuation, but Marvin Harrison was heralded as the best prospect when it came to wide receivers, that Malik Neighbors was so slept on. Malik Neighbors would have been a number one wide receiver in any other class. He would have been a number one wide receiver in this class, above Ted McMillan. So I think you're totally fine if you had ended up with either of those guys in rookie drafts.
Oh, for sure. I 100% agree. He's essentially at the point now where he's unobtainable, I would imagine, in a lot of leagues.
Yeah.
Whether you're rebuilding or trying to compete. I don't think anybody's moving him unless you have to, pay the piper
Yeah. I
almost.
mean, there are legit
Um,
questions being asked about whether you pick Malik Neighbors or name other wide receiver one. Garrett Wilson, I would take Malik Neighbors. AJ
I
Brown,
think
I
you and
take
I.
Malik Neighbors.
Oh,
Not
see,
a big Philly
okay.
fan.
No, I know. I get it. And I 100% get it. So, real quick before we go back into this, I did bump, I think we talked about this. I did bump Neighbors over Garrett Wilson. So, I agree with you 100% on that one. AJ Brown has been just so damn consistent for at least the past 3 years. It's hard for me to bump Neighbors ahead of him just yet. I just like the consistency factor is there for me. And it's not like AJ Brown has no upside, you
Yeah.
know? So it's tough for me. But at the 106, now, we did forget to mention this is a super flex tight end rookie mock. And as the host that I am terrible at describing things. But the 106 for me is going to be none other than Brock Bowers, tight end for Las Vegas Raiders. I bumped him to my tight end one. I couldn't wait anymore. And I did it a couple weeks ago, but he has just been so damn impressive. The numbers, I tweeted it out a couple days ago or maybe a week or two ago, have been higher than what Laporta was putting up last year. He's currently the tight end 2 in fantasy. He is now the number 1 target in Las Vegas with, the departure of Davante Adams. And I could see him being the, number 1 target on that team for the foreseeable future. They're going to bring in, wide receivers in the second round. They're going to bring in a QB, hopefully, in the first round this year. So it would not shock me if Brock Bowers is the Travis Kelce that we've been wanting.
Yeah, Brock Bowers is definitely TE1 right now. He's putting up TE1 numbers, and it could be the second year in a row that we see a rookie end as the tight end 1 this year. So
it's insane to think about.
I love it. He is just their gadget player. They use him every way possible. And I think prior to the draft, we were worried about Michael Mayer and potentially what a second round TE from the previous year would do. But Michael Mayer's not carving anywhere into this. Brock Bowers is solidified as their TE1, and they use him in so many different ways.
How dare you hurt me with this Michael Mayer conversation?
Trust me, I was drinking the Kool-Aid back then, Mike.
Yeah, I put out an article in the preseason that he was a buy not the preseason, pre-draft, that he was a buy. And then, they just had to completely fuck me on that one.
Yeah, of course.
But is the 106 high? Is the 106 high for Bowers in this?
I could see, and honestly, where I'm going next is it makes sense that you could go higher with Bowers because I think it's you could take it one way or the other. But for me, I had Bowers 3 spots behind.
Okay, I mean we're not far off. I would consider 3 spots behind the same, almost a tier. Yeah,
but I think it also depends on how many point tight end premium. Did we decide whether it was 1 point or if it was less or more?
We did not.
Okay.
Again, I'm terrible host. I am the host with the least. But I will say we could go with half because I think that's what most people play, and I myself play in a lot of +1.
Yeah.
I don't know about yourself.
Yeah, me as well. And honestly,
so we'll go +1.
I probably keep Bowers where I have them, but I don't see anywhere wrong where you could have it between 6 to 9. I mean, you could even have Brock Bowers lower, but there's some really good guys coming up here, and I think you had said it before we started the draft, but that picks 6 to 15 are going to be tough because I think you can make an argument of anybody up at the 6th spot.
Who do you got at the 107?
I have Breece Hall. And I mean, at this point, for me, it was kind of between Bijan and Breece. But based off what we've seen of Breece's career, I think you got to take him versus Bijan. I mean, Bijan's still got a lot to prove in the Atlanta offense. And I just don't think that he's been featured enough as what we wanted.
Yeah. So I'm glad you took that because my 107 was Bijan and my 108 was Breece. We're in a little different ends of the coin on this one, but again, this is another. I feel like we say this for the past almost 8 picks. This is a 1A, 1B, A-B conversation. There's no wrong answer. When I look at Bijan though, and I look at Brees the same way, but when I look at Bijan, I see an LT, a Jamal Charles, just like the guy who should be getting more carries than he is. And I think both of these guys get just screwed by the Tyler Algiers and the Braylon Allens of the world. It's frustrating as hell. But I do think as the year goes on, and you could say this for Brees as well, but the addition of Davante kind of diminishes that a little bit. I do think as the year goes on, with Kirk being as old as he is, and the Achilles injury, they might run the ball a little bit more.
Yeah,
they might. We'll see. But I'm still holding Bijan at my running back 1, and Brees is my running back 2. And again, I can't fault anybody for having it flopped.
Mm-hmm.
Who is your 109?
109. You did take the 108 because I was going to say 108. I actually had Gibbs. So.
Oh my God! I forgot to put. Oh my God! I forgot to put Gibbs even on. See, we talked about this. There are several players.
Well, we
forgot to put.
I think you were the one that had alerted me towards Tyron Williams, and then yeah. So. Yeah, no, I had Gibbs as my 108. Are we? Mm-hmm. We're on 108.
Yeah, we're at 108. I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. That was my fault.
So yeah, I had Gibbs there. I think this is another situation where you talk about an annoying other running back that takes up part of the room, and of course, I was actually asked recently on the most recent Sunday morning kind of Discord talk that we have with the DNA crew, where TJ asked me about if I was worried about Gibbs' future with Montgomery coming back with the extension, and I said, I'm not worried because I think it's just basically holds Gibbs straight pat, right? I think we see if Monty was hurt. I mean, it goes one way or the other, right? If Gibbs is hurt, Monty's a top 5 running back at that time. Same thing with, Gibbs is easily top 3 when if Monty 100%. Was out. But Gibbs still holds a lot of the upside that he's always held. He's still, for me, the number 3 running back. So you got to give me Gibbs here. This is where it became a little tougher with Bowers.
Yeah, I like the Gibbs pick here. Also my 103, even though I forgot him, he's not forgotten in my heart. I like what Dan Campbell always says. You don't want to drive a Ferrari like a pickup truck or something to that. Yeah. When he talks about Monty and Gibbs, the dude is so damn electric. If there is, I mentioned Jamal Charles for Bijan, but if there is a Jamal Charles clone, it is Gibbs, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And Jamal Charles is, believe it or not, one of my favorite running backs of all time.
Yeah, he was great for its time. I think you and I are roughly the same age, Mike. So I was a little kid watching Jamal Charles and who was the famous Eagle back then? It was Shady McCoy.
You had Shady McCoy,
like, yeah. Those guys were the beasts of the NFL at that time, and Jamal Charles was, top 3 running back of his time. So, and as fast as Jahmyr Gibbs is, you see a lot of that also with the Jamal Charles take. So,
and just the overall quickness, it's insane. But this leaves me at the 109, and this might actually come as a shock to you. But I'm going to go with Drake London, wide receiver for the Atlanta Falcons. That might be a shock to you, but right now he is currently wide receiver 5 on the season, wide receiver 9 in average. And to be honest, this could be a product of Kirk coming in, but the second Kirk is gone, I have been a big Michael Penix believer, and I am super excited to see what that offense could look like with him. And I think London could be what Michael Pittman is plus. So Michael Pittman has been a consistent wide receiver 2, essentially his entire career, fantasy wise. I could see that being Drake London plus type thing.
Yeah, I I'm a little bit lower on London as far as where my rankings are, but I also just see that his upside has grown so much in this offense, especially the last couple of weeks, in the way that they featured him. So I like the pick.
How far behind are you on him?
I have him at the 202.
Okay, so again, we're not far off
No.
here. This is kind of almost pick your poison
Absolutely.
spots.
Yeah.
Especially with the amount of talent. Who do you got at the 110?
I have right now, who a lot of people are trying to trade for, trying to at least trade away if they're contenders, but you should not even trade him away as a contender, but Rashee Rice.
Wolf.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's probably where my rankings might have a little bit of a bigger difference with you, but I still am high on buying Rice right now. Before he was hurt, he was just the target hog for Kansas City. He was showing why he was a top 5 wide receiver. And then, of course, what happens? Patrick Mahomes causes the torn LCL.
We talked about
yes, but again, Patty has his own love of a lot of fantasy football players. Not right now because he has been not so great. But Rashee has really proven himself that I think we can pretty safely say when he comes back into this offense, he's going to get drawn right back into being one of Patrick Mahomes' favorite targets.
So I am a bit lower on Rashee Rice, and I'm going to explain why. I have him as a late second right now. I can't argue what he has done so far, right? I can't argue against it. My biggest fear is the thing you said is when he comes back, right? We're talking an injury that's going to cost him this year. That's, understandable. Things happen. But then there's that looming suspension. How long is that suspension? Now we're talking possibly a year plus, possibly 2 years. We don't really know. That unknown scares the hell out of me, to be honest. And we've seen what this kind of missed time does to a player. The rust doesn't always come off. So I am a little weary of him. He is a guy that in the preseason I was trying to tear down from in Rashee Rice, trying to grab, say, because there was some hype on him. I wanted to tear down from him to Zay Flowers, believe it or not. If I could have gotten a second, I would have taken Zay Flowers in a second for Rice.
Yeah, I mean, with the injury now, that's definitely a great trade. I think had he not got injured, and there's obviously a lot of speculation that goes along.
You would have gotten more, yeah.
I think that Rashee Rice would have been more. Yeah, I think we would be talking top 5 dynasty wide receiver. But I agree there's a lot of questions, and I think that's the one where he actually was lower on my list, and I can't be impartial with Rashee because I had him for beginning of the season. I drafted him as a rookie in some of my dynasty drafts back then. It hit. And it was like when you saw what he could do to the offense and how many balls he was targeting, getting targeted by Mahomes, and also how many balls he was catching, and just the force that he was on the Kansas City offense. I think that's what I really saw with keeping him up within the first round. But I definitely understand the concern right now.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what his future holds.
And the suspension, too.
Yeah, exactly. Because that is something I do think the league is going to have to deal with, believe it or not, at some point. So this leaves me at the 110, correct? So we're talking Superflex tight end premium, right?
Yep.
And this is my QB2 of this previous class, and that is going to be Drake May. I have been super high on Drake May. I have called him the Josh Allen, Carson Wentz. No, sorry, not Josh Allen. Justin Herbert, Carson Wentz clone. If you were to put both of those players in one body, that would be Drake May, right? In Philadelphia, I saw what Carson Wentz is. The unbelievable plays. The Patrick Mahomes before Patrick Mahomes was a thing, was Carson Wentz. But I also saw the absolute boneheaded, what the hell are you doing type plays that Carson Wentz made. And when I watched Drake May in college, I saw the exact same thing, but the immense talent is staring at us in the face. And I think that's why, whether I wanted it this year or not, we're seeing Drake May now. And what he did to a team in Houston who has two of the best edge rushers in football in Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter, with a banged up offensive line, to throw over 200 some odd yards, 3 touchdowns. Did have 2 picks. One, I can't really put too much on him. It was a tipped screen pass. That kind of happens. But he showed a lot. And again, I mentioned it earlier. I see 3 guys from this class in the top 12, and Drake May is one of them.
Yeah, no, I like that take. I have Drake May lower, but I think it just has to do more so with the New England offense,
Yeah.
and where I see that going. But he is a dog. I mean, I think he's 6'4", 6'5", somewhere in there. The size is there. He's got the arm. He has the ability to use his legs and be able to get out of the pocket and make something happen. And so I think he's definitely got the potential to be, a top 10 quarterback within the next couple of seasons, given the right tools and given the right help.
Yeah, for me, I really hope they give him some help. It's tough times in New England. As an Eagles fan, it feels pretty good because, and I'm sure even as a Lions fan, it feels pretty good watching the Patriots struggle slightly. But for a guy in Drake May, who I think both of us are pretty high on, we'd like to see a little bit more.
Yeah.
So who's your 111?
So at the 111, are we at the 112?
I thought I was the 110.
Okay.
You, me.
Which either way,
111.
Either way, I'm taking Trey McBride there. So
okay, perfect.
I'm going to take him off as the second tight end off the board. I think for me, he usurps Sam Laporta just based on kind of where he's at with target share. Of course, not having a lot of competition outside of Marv, and next best asset there is Michael Wilson. So, no, Trey McBride towards the end of last season proved to us why he is a top 5 tight end. And I think keeping him as the tight end 2 in Dynasty going forward is pretty solid. I think even with Arizona still struggling right now, he gets the targets. He's going to get something from Kyler. And so I got to have him the 11 there.
Yeah, I can't argue against it. I have him a little lower, but I have him in a grouping of the 3 tight ends, right? So, and they can all be flip-flopped to me. So I'm not against this pick at all. I think this is probably the right pick. I'm probably going to end up being wrong, to be honest with you. But I do think he's a very high-end dynasty asset, especially in this format, in tight end premium formats. That brings me to the 112. I have a couple spots I want to go here. But I got to go with a guy I've been high on. I can't give up on him just yet. And that's going to be Anthony Richardson, quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. He might even be worse off if he was in New England. I just see the absolute raw talent this dude has. And I also take into account that this dude has played 8 games of NFL football, and I think it was 12 games in college. So this dude really hasn't even been playing that long. We're talking a 22-year-old at this point in an offense with Shane Steichen, who I have seen here in Philadelphia work wonders with Jalen Hurts. Jalen hasn't even been the same since he's gone. I think I'm having some copium here, but I think that they're going to get this ship righted at some point.
Let me just say that your hopium for Anthony Richardson is about as high as my hopium is for Rashee Rice. But that being said, I have been personally hurt by Anthony Richardson this season in multiple leagues. But I do see him having the physical talent to be that top, that QB1. I actually, at the beginning of the season, on one of the DNA, one of our DNA Q&As, we were asked who our QB1 is, and I put Anthony Richardson as my QB1 because I saw him having the upside to be the Josh Allen type. And Josh Allen is actually a great comp when it comes to Anthony Richardson, purely because He has the legs. He has the physical ability to do whatever you want him to do. The problem with Anthony Richardson is his accuracy. He's got the arm,
Mm-hmm.
but his accuracy is the problem. And with Josh Allen, he was able to work out his accuracy issues. My issue with Anthony Richardson, it's all in the same argument as you had for Rashee Rice. If the injury didn't happen, where would Anthony Richardson be? I drafted him as a rookie in my my home redraft league, and I was extremely excited when he started to pop off that first game. And as the next couple of games went on, super excited about where his fantasy ability was going. And then, of course, he has the separated AC joint, and then we lose a whole season of him. At that point, we get the hype again with Anthony Richardson, and then we have kind of this stinker of what these first couple of games have been. And as you kind of pointed to, it comes down to the inexperience of Anthony Richardson, where you see somebody like Jaden Daniels, who has played 5 years in college. You know, a lot of those guys who play 5 years plus have a much better transition to the NFL.
Much easier too,
Definitely. Yeah. So, to me, Anthony Richardson has the ability to be a top guy. I just have him much lower on my list just because right now I'm personally hurt, but also, I do see the concerns that, he may not. There is the high upside, but also the low floor of a 5-point game if he doesn't hit.
Yeah. If this doesn't pan out, I think I will possibly start a assistance program because, I've been trying to beat the drum as loud as I can. I'm ready to be hurt, and I think I'm okay with being hurt. And if it just doesn't work out, then again, you'll see me at the program. But
you remind me of the Michael Scott meme where it's just I'm ready to be hurt again.
Yeah, exactly. To be honest, I am. I see that throw to Alec Pierce, I think was week 1 where he tripped. There's pressure in his face, and he just absolutely launches it. It's just the elite upside we see in him, right? And then we see him a week later trying to throw a short crosser to Josh Downs, or it might have been Pierce again, and just absolutely miss him. And it's just so frustrating. I'm just trying to be hopeful. But this will lead us into the second round, and you are now at the 201. What do you got?
Ooh, okay, so we had a long discussion about this player just a little bit ago, but I have Garrett Wilson as my 201.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, do we take the Davante Adams addition as I think it lowers his ceiling, but he still has a floor. And, I think going forward, depending on how long Davante's there, I mean, if it's Aaron Rodgers' way, he's going to have for multiple seasons. But if Garrett Wilson can make something out of still being the other wide receiver on the New York Jets, I won't even say the second wide receiver because he could just be something different than what Davante Adams is. If he's able to use a different skill set, whether that is to do the crossing routes, midfield, short routes, if he can be that guy and still get the targets in PPR, he is still a gold mine.
Yeah, I agree. I have him in the same range as you. I had him at the I was leaning between him and AR at the 112. He's right in that same spot for me. So I completely agree with this. He is going to be the target earner of this team, the guy who can route up people and get open. Davante's not as explosive in his routes anymore. Obviously, because you get older, you're more of a less likely to create as much separation as Garrett Wilson will now. Yeah. So I completely agree with this pick. Again, we talked about it earlier. Don't panic, especially in Dynasty on Garrett Wilson. Is just going to not be as exciting as we hoped it was this year. Mm-hmm. That will lead me into my 2-2. And it's funny to say 2-2 because I feel like a ballerina saying it. But this is a guy we haven't seen yet this year, or we saw him week 1. And I have been enamored with this guy. I wasn't super active on Twitter yet, but my love for Puka Nacua is second to none. and that is who I'm going to take here at the 2-2. I think this guy has top 12 upside as soon as he gets back. And it might not, let me rephrase that. Not as soon as he gets back, as soon as he starts to get healthy again, even with Cooper Kupp. We saw both of them be extremely effective. I know a lot of people were telling us that, when Cooper comes back, Puka's going to be a non-factor. No, we've seen both of them be effective in a Sean McVay offense, and he is the perfect wide receiver for a Sean McVay offense. What do you think of Puka?
Yeah, I think I was really high on Puka, and I think there was a lot of people who were fairly harsh against me in the offseason for putting Puka as possibly the wide receiver 5 of Dynasty moving forward. And I think while looking back at that take, that was probably a little high, but I think that's where his ceiling is.
Agreed.
I also see, unfortunately, again, this is another situation of injury affecting somebody's projection of where they go. And I do see that, like, if he can just keep that connection with Stafford, he is still a wide receiver 1 in all of fantasy football. Sorry, not the wide receiver 1, but a top wide receiver. And I have him a little bit lower on my list.
Much lower?
Not much lower. Basically, I had actually Drake London behind Garrett Wilson. So again, we were pretty close on him, but right after Drake London. So
gotcha.
I see him behind those two guys, and beyond that, I think he as a 5th round rookie receiver last year, he broke the record for rookie receiving yards his first season, or in his rookie year. And it's, we would have possibly seen Malik Neighbors do the same thing this season until the concussion happened, but
he still might. Shit.
He still could. But Puka's a player. He is a dog. He's going to come back on the Rams and still. I think Cooper Kupp's also going to have a great rest of season. So I think the Rams are a great offense to buy into right now.
Agreed. I think Matt Stafford, previous Detroit Lion, just can feed everybody. I'm not really worried about that at all.
Yeah. I mean,
who do you got?
I hate to face him. That's every time we faced him in the last couple of seasons. I have hated the fact that you do not know if he is going to carry his team to the win, because he's done it as a Lion and he's done it as a Ram, where we played him first game of the season this year, and then of course the playoffs last year. You just don't know.
That is actually
You just don't know if he's going to carry a comeback. I mean, literally, we were the cardiac cats in Detroit because he had the most comeback wins. I think he had 8 in one season or so. It was insane.
He is an insane quarterback, a very underappreciated guy, to be honest. Who's your 2-3?
My 2-3 is Davante Adams. So, he is coming back from the concussion this week. He has also hurt from the loss of Tua. The first couple of games after Tua was gone, we thought, he's going to be the bell cow of the offense, and he's going to take a lot of the targets from Skylar Thompson, and of course now we have Tyler Huntley. But I still do see Davante Chan being a league winner when he is playing at his best. The offense just has to do a better job of featuring him. Unfortunately, they can't even really feature Tyreek Hill right now. So I still have a lot of hope for Davante Chan being, at this point, out of the class we have RB4.
Yeah. My fear with him is the injuries. I have him around the same spot. So it's not even like the injuries are scaring me that much, because the dude's a fantasy game breaker, essentially. That's not something that super concerns me. But I like what you mentioned. Once Tua gets back, I think the value will spike back up again. Tua was a guy I've been really high on, and people were kind of poo-pooing this, but we look at that now, and they need Tua. Like, he's much more important to that offense than we thought, I think.
Yeah, I'm just imagining Mike McDaniel being Wolverine, just looking at his picture of Tua. Just
With the yeah, that's a good one.
But
uh,
it's
but
I mean, we need to see. I mean, there was news that I think Adam Schefter had pointed to Mike McDaniel alluding to maybe Tua coming back this season, at least at some point in the 2024 season. But as Jalen Waddle owners, Tyreek Hill owners, all HN owners, all of us have to hope that Tua is hopefully. I want him to be okay with his health, but I also would love to see him back in football.
agreed. I think they should have or they should still try to make a move for a quarterback if they think Tua can't come back this season. But again, Davante Chain or A-Chain, however you say it, I keep getting corrected. As a Philadelphian, I'm terrible at pronouncing names. We do not do well with that.
You're giving easy ones like Brown and Smith.
Yeah, thank God. Well, see, the thing is, you think Alshon Jeffrey would be an easy one, but if you were to listen to Philly Sports Talk Radio for about 5 minutes during that time, it's Alshon Jeffries. Where the fuck is the S coming from? Where is the S at Jeffrey? What's that?
A Midwestern thing. We put.
We do it all the time. It's horrible. We do it with a lot of players that I can't. Alshon Jeffrey's the one that sticks out to me because it annoyed the hell out of me. There's no fucking S at the end. I don't understand, but people do it all the time. So that leaves me at the 2-4, and this is where I'm starting to have some trouble, right? Because, like I said earlier, this is kind of where the group of tight ends was for me, and I have to go with my heart. I have to go with my gut. I'm going to go with Dalton Kincaid here at the 2-4 in a tight end premium league. Dalton Kincaid to me is just, I think he has tight end 1 upside. Obviously, we haven't seen it just yet. He's still tight end 11 on the year, which is extremely impressive for what I thought he was doing because I didn't think he was even there. I thought he was in the 20s. I think Laporta up until last week was 18. So we're not getting the tight end production we thought for sure. But when I watch Dalton Kincaid, I see Zach Ertz, and I love Zach Ertz. And maybe that's my heart playing tricks on me. But it did take Zach Ertz a little bit of time to start getting some use in the NFL, right? And we typically see tight ends not really break out into their second or third year. So this could be the guy that eventually starts to show that top 5 upside that I believe he has. They just need to get it going, and I think Cooper does help it slightly.
Yeah, Dalton Kincaid is probably a great buy low right now, considering he is not going to be this bad forever.
I fucking hope.
we hope, but yeah. I think you said something earlier in the show that Amari Cooper coming to the team could help Dalton Kincaid. And that's probably true because right now, the wide receivers that they have aren't really any, like prior to Amari Cooper, weren't anything that were really that impressive. I mean, Keon Coleman, a rookie, has a lot of issues with his game. I shouldn't say a lot of issues, but has some red flags with his game that need to get figured out. Khalil Shakir, had the path there for him to be the wide receiver 1 of the team if Amari Cooper didn't step in. And then of course
he showed some promise.
As well. But
Shakir showed some he was top 24, before he got hurt.
Yeah, for sure. I think he did enough to be a trusted target, but I don't think it was what Amari Cooper brings. And that's just the difference between what Amari Cooper is and what Khalil Shakir is.
I just try not to let any Khalil Shakir slander on this podcast.
That's fair. Well, you know that you can't get any Devonta Smith slander out of me.
Oh, that one, yeah. That luckily he's not in this mock.
Neither is Amon-Ra St. Brown because that slander doesn't get very far either.
I tried to keep that class out of this because the quarterbacks were just so bad. I just couldn't even bring myself to add them.
You don't see a path for the future of the Jacksonville Jaguars of Mac Jones.
Oh, I mean, at this point, who the hell knows? Because Doug Peterson's gone. Trevor Lawrence is awful, or he's going to be gone. Trevor Lawrence is awful.
And seeing what's happening with quarterbacks right now, with renaissance of Sam Darnold, Geno Smith.
God, if that happens. If that happens, that would be the most hilarious fucking thing to ever happen. Who's your 2-5?
So let me ask you this question because I actually can't remember. Did we list Sam Laporta?
Nope. He's
I'm
all
going to take
yours.
Laporta here, and I actually had him listed as my 112, but I don't know what happened.
Still not
there.
far.
But yeah, Sam Laporta is honestly my tight end 3 right now. I have Brock Bowers and Trey McBride ahead of him. Dalton Kincaid could be a choice over him because, I mean, even he was a choice in the regular NFL draft. And I think Dalton Kincaid was a better college prospect as well. That being said, I have to take my Lions blinders off. Sam Laporta is a trusted target of Jared Goff. We saw it last season. He caught 10 touchdowns, had over 900 yards, and I think he broke. I don't know that did he break the rookie record for receptions. He's up there.
That's a good question. I know he was the highest scoring fantasy tight end.
Yes,
rookie.
He was tight end 1 his rookie season, and I think you take that alone. The Lions are going to get it figured out as far as where the targets are going. You and I were talking about it earlier. The problem is there are so many mouths to feed. I could list all the mouths.
Yeah.
The newest one, of course, honestly added that he's going to be talked about later in this draft is Jameson Williams. And Jameson Williams, as honestly, I think he showed more last week than even week 1. But he's having some staying power in this offense. And Jared Goff knows that he can go to him with the deep shot. He knows that his crossing routes this season have looked amazing, whereas he really didn't have as many of those routes ran in last year. Of course, really didn't even show up his rookie season because of the injury. But all of that being said, Laporta has the talent to get targets from Goff. And when he does, they're going house. I think you saw a lot of red zone targets last year. A lot of touchdowns ended up coming from that. And actually, I was someone who said to fade Sam Laporta this season because he was going to regress to the median on touchdowns. That being said, I think he's underperforming what his talent actually is. And so I think he still holds as a top 8 tight end. And to me, again, he's still top 3 in Dynasty right now. So
yeah, I agree with you. I definitely thought there was going to be some touchdown regression, but I thought it would still end up averaging out well because I didn't see the emergence of Jameson Williams affecting him this much so far.
Even Lions fans,
right?
Really. I mean, I think there were some Lions fans that were very hopeful, but I don't think anyone saw this out of Jameson Williams this season.
They definitely seem to have
so fast.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it. They've kind of changed the route tree that they've given him so far this year, and I think that's benefited him. It's not just straight line speed. There's a lot of crossers that they're using, a lot of ways getting him open to use that explosiveness that he has, and it's hard to argue against what he's doing. I was out, but he's proved me wrong so far.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely he's later on in our draft, and I think there is a piece of me that wants to talk more about him because there's just so much love for Jameson Williams right now in Detroit.
All right, so this leaves me with the 2-6, and maybe this is a little spicy again, but I had him as my wide receiver 2 of this class. That's gonna be Rome Odunze, Chicago Bears. That's going to end up having him paired with my Caleb Williams pick at the 102. But I believe when Keenan Allen's gone, he's kind of had the JSN effect, to be honest. I think Rome has shown more so far in his first year than JSN did in his first year. They just need to get him involved. I've watched some Bears film, not every week, but a few weeks here and there. He's been open. He is getting open, at least in my opinion. And I'm not a scout by any stretch of the imagination, but he's the guy who could, even if he's not fully open, could win those contested catch balls. But Caleb just hasn't gotten to the point where I think he trusts him just yet. And we see the emergence of Caleb coming on. And once that keeps continuing, I think the connection of him and Rome is going to get stronger.
Yeah, I mean, when Rome was coming out of the draft, it was like you have a top QB coming out of the draft at the exact same time as Rome is coming out with Caleb Williams, and it's like these guys are going to grow together. Eventually Keenan Allen's going to retire. DJ Moore is DJ Moore. He's amazing. He's an underrated dynasty wide receiver, but I think
Just so consistent.
Go ahead, Mike.
Just so consistent. I'm sorry.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Rome has a higher ceiling. I mean, what he was in college and what he could have been. But again, he came in with two other guys who were amazing in this class. Rome Odunze could have been the wide receiver 1 next year, with competing with Tet McMillan and some of the other guys. Of course, I think future look into things, but I think Tet McMillan is the wide receiver 1 going into next season, at least as of right now. But Rome Odunze is a great wide receiver, and I was trying to buy a lot of him this offseason. I saw a lot of the hype that was with I watched a lot of the Hard Knocks and saw the connection between him and Caleb Williams. It was fantastic to watch.
Yeah, I like I said, he was my wide receiver 2 of this class. So that tells you how high I was. Having him over Neighbors was a choice, and because he's the prototypical wide receiver that I like, the big-bodied, can still run routes. Yeah, exactly. But those guys can still run routes. He's not just like the big body, hope he catches it type guy.
Those are the guys that play into the late into their careers, like Mike Evans. So
exactly. Yeah. Please don't get me too excited by saying Mike Evans' name, because I will be in another meeting of sadness with Anthony Richardson. But 207, still a lot of strength on the board. What do you got?
So I actually thought you were going to take my guy here, because you said a number 2 wide receiver. To me, it's Jaden Reed. So
that was my next one.
I was like, I hope he doesn't take my man here, Jaden Reed. And here's the part that sucks about it, because I love to root for this guy, but he happened to play for 2 of my greatest rivals, both in college and
I didn't even think of that.
So as you can see, I am a huge Michigan fan. And Jaden Reed. So there's another Sparty in here later on in the draft. If you already know who it is, props to you. But I hated them in college because they were so good. Jaden Reed you can see he's the gadget player. I think I saw the name Little Debo somewhere, and I thought that was really the best comparison, that he can run it on the ground. They have been giving him design plays out of the backfield. They have been throwing the targets at him. He has shown up this season, and I think that anybody who bought low on him is reaping the benefits. It's crazy. I think he was like a 4th-round receiver a couple of years ago. And to show what he has, it is impressive.
Yeah, I think he was a 2nd-round pick, believe it or not.
Okay, I think I'm confusing. Dobbs was the 4th-rounder in Jaden Reed.
Oh, but I 100% agree with you. It was 1A, 1B again with Reed and Odunze for me. They were kind of back to back in my rankings. I've actually heard it on your Dynasty DNA podcast. Somebody on that podcast called him Debo Light, and I think he's shaken those light tag off of him. I love the way the Green Bay Packers use him, because we kind of saw that in college. As a Michigan Spartan, he was a guy who could create after the catch, and it's very impressive.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's to say, a lot of Michigan fans probably would have loved to have him on the team.
For sure. So that leaves me. Actually, it's funny that you said it. You mentioned another Michigan Spartan, and that's going to be my 2-8. That's going to be Ken Walker.
Man, okay. So I have to just say this about Kenneth Walker, and the fact that 5 touchdown game against Michigan still haunts me.
Did you have him much lower than this?
No, actually, funny enough, I actually had Jaden Reed lower than Kenneth Walker, and when the pick came up to me, I was like, "F this, I'm taking Jaden Reed right now."
Yeah.
So yeah, Kenneth
And
Walker.
I took Ken Walker here because you mentioned the Spartan. I was like, he's going to take him at some fucking
Who's
point.
gonna be
So
next?
yeah, that's why I decided to take him here. What I like about Ken Walker is we mentioned it with Chain, to a lesser extent, of course. He could win you weeks by taking 175 to the house. He's an explosive runner. And I like having him as like my running back two, but a high end running back
Yeah.
two on my fantasy team. So say for instance I have a guy who's just very consistent, who's going to give me the solid points, and then a Ken Walker who's going to give me 10. It's going to be a little frustrating, but then he's going to give me 30 or 25 because he's going to break something large. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Uh, and I like what this Seattle offense is doing right now. So I'm all in on Ken Walker. He's a relatively, I would say, cheap buy right now.
Yeah. I think he's cheaper than some of the other potential running backs or receivers still on the board, and
Agreed.
it's definitely something where it's like you want to strike now. I think people still think that there's a hope for Zach Charbonnet out there, and Kenneth Walker has basically stomped out all those hopes.
He is a good change of pace to that
Yes,
team.
a good Rico Dowdle too, and Ezekiel Elliott.
Agreed. So that brings you up at the 2-9. Who do you got?
So actually, this is somebody who would take a lot more. I would rather have Kenneth Walker, and it would still take more draft capital or player value to get to this player, and that's Kyron Williams. But Kyron Williams
Okay, good
is
one.
still a great option when it comes to having as your RB1 or RB2, just because he has such an amazing floor, even still on such a bad Rams offense right now. When the Rams are great, he is also doing great. But as they've lost Cup, as they've lost Puka, he has not lost the load of what he's carrying. It's still an insane. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's still an insane amount of snap share and share of rushes that and carries that he gets on the team. It's
Mhm.
probably somewhere north. I know I did the research on it last year with where he was at in his rookie his sophomore season last year. That was
Yeah, it was a
yeah.
sophomore.
Um, but that he had an 85% snap share on and the fact that he was on the field. He was a workhorse, and he still is. But honestly, you drop the guy 70%, 80, 60% snap share, he's still going to end up being an RB1. Um, so yeah, give me Kyron there. I don't think the draft capital matters. I think they've proven that Sean McVay loves him in the same way that he loved Todd Gurley. Um, yeah,
So I like this pick as well. I was a guy who was not a believer in Blake Corum, to be honest with you. Sorry, as I know
and
you're a
you know
big
what?
Michigan guy.
I'm not biased about this as a Michigan fan. He was used in such a way where he got so much volume that he was going to break records. But he isn't the type of fast, elusive back that was going to be successful in the NFL without being just a change of pace back behind another speedier running back.
Yeah, I agree. And I wasn't someone who was swayed away from Kyron Williams because of Blake Corum. To be honest with you, we haven't seen much of anything of Blake Corum uh, at all. I will say though, the first 2 weeks for Kyron were a little bit of a stinker, and then for this past couple weeks has been much better, much more improved. Again, I think you mentioned it. He is still just undervalued, and I appreciate it because I'm eventually going to take heed of my own advice and actually go out and buy him. I just don't know why I haven't.
I mean, on a contender, I guess where do you price him at? Kenneth Walker. I think you can get Kenneth Walker for like a first and a third, personally, or a first and a second at the most. That's probably what
Yeah,
I would also maybe spend on Kyron Williams.
I think that's what I was exactly going to say. The price to me is the same, and I would be willing to give it up. It just depends on how much upside do I want. You know what I mean? I think Ken Walker has the higher
Yeah,
upside, but I think geez, these K's are screwing me up. The KWs are really screwing me up. Kyron has the much safer
yeah,
floor. So that brings me to the 2-9. And I think I'm going to go against my rankings here and go with Zay Flowers. I really like Zay. I think he's been getting peppered with targets in this offense, getting a lot of receptions, especially in a PPR points per game. He's been very, very solid. I see him as a perennial wide receiver two fantasy finish, right maybe in that back end where it's like 20 to 22. And I feel confident with that, putting that in my lineup every single week because it's just going to be consistent.
yeah. That's a great pick. I think Lamar Jackson has really continued to show why he was the MVP last year. And
Hmm.
Zay Flowers is the featured wide receiver on that team. And as much as Mark Andrews disappearing has hurt a lot of Andrews owners, has definitely helped a lot of Zay Flowers owners.
Were you? Was I too high
No,
here? What do
not
you
at all.
think?
You were only off by a couple picks. So I only had him maybe a few spots lower, but I had Anthony Richardson, Kincaid, no dudes ahead of him.
Hmm. I had a few guys ahead of him that are still on the board that when I'm looking at it in real time, I'm like, why are they ahead of him? I just feel more confident in him right
Mm-hmm.
now. So that brings us to the 210. Who do you got?
Yeah, I'm taking this pick only because I feel like the amount of value that it has gained as it has dropped. But I actually really don't love the player anymore as much as I used to when he was coming out. Like Chris Olave. Uh,
Yep, that's.
he has lasted on the board this long, and it's one of those ones where it's like, you're in a sleeper draft. It's like I got to take him here. Um, he, of course, coming out with Garrett Wilson, we saw them having a very similar talent level at college level coming out of Ohio State. Um, at the Buckeyes. But I
Yeah.
also freaking love their prospects. I love CJ Stroud. I love Kenneth Walker. Not Kenneth Walker. Shit. Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson. Um, but the problem with Chris Olave is he hasn't done it. He has done it, but he hasn't done it to the level of Garrett Wilson with just as bad a quarterback play. And I've said this, a couple of times now throughout the offseason and early this season is just what does Olave need to still produce at the level of Garrett Wilson? Garrett Wilson didn't need he had Zach Wilson. So
Mhm.
I just don't see the path for Chris Olave to be a top wide receiver one. I still see him being somewhere in the low end wide receiver one, high end wide receiver twos. Um, it's just there's stuff there. I mean, even last season, people really questioning his effort on the field and whether he really wanted to play in the games with the Saints. I, of course, Derek Carr's hurt right now. Spencer Rattler's in, but and Chris Olave is out right now with a concussion. But when he comes back, what are we expecting to see? And I don't know that it's
Mhm.
going to be much different the rest of the season.
So I like this pick as much as I don't like the player as well. You mentioned it perfectly. The value at the 210 here for Chris Olave is perfect. Um, you and I actually talked about this several weeks ago on the old Twitter
Yeah.
sphere. He was going as a wide receiver 12 in startups, and that was absolutely asinine to me. And I couldn't get behind it. I would have traded him. I have no shares of him, so I'm a non-believer as well. I would have traded him for Davante Plus in a heartbeat.
Oh, 100%. I think,
I don't think you could do it now,
yeah,
but
you can't get it now for sure. But I think even with Chad Parsons, I talked about how I would rather have Devonta Smith over Chris Olave easily because Devonta Smith has done it as the wide receiver two on his team. You put him as a wide
hmm
receiver one on any other team, we're talking about the franchise player of that team. But Chris Olave, it's just he hasn't proven it in the time that he's been there. It just hasn't been enough. It's Garrett Wilson can at least tout the fact that he's had multiple 1,000-yard seasons with poor quarterback play and just still been, the top receiver. So that's why I haven't really lost a lot of value in him, even with Davante Adams going. But Chris Olave just still hasn't shown it for me.
I am 100% with you, but again, you couldn't pass on the value, so I can't fight with you on that one. That brings me to the 211, and again, we are at the point where there's still some really good value on the board. It's kind of almost pick your poison type of year or type of time. And I'm going to go with, and this might come as a shock, maybe he could go a little bit later, but I have been relatively impressed with what he's done, especially being the quote unquote wide receiver 3 on that team. And that's going to be Jackson Smith-Njigba, Seattle wide receiver. Currently wide receiver 25, right? Did you see that? Like I was very happy to see him as a wide receiver 25 in PPR standpoint. I think when Tyler Lockett is gone, and we could see that this year or next year, him and DK complement each other absolutely perfectly.
Yeah. I don't know if the future is Geno. It's Geno right now.
He's looked positive.
He has looked positive. This team has competed in games, and the game against the Lions and everything like that, watching them personally.
That was a fun one.
That was a great one. And Geno, at times, it was like the same feeling I got from Matt Stafford of like, okay, they're not out of the game. They still continue to get the ball, and I'm worried that we're going to lose the game because if you put it in Geno's hands on the last drive, they could win this game, and that's how they were playing. But JSN, he's got the talent. He was actually the best receiver on the Ohio State Buckeyes when
I'm glad you said it. I was going to say it.
Yeah, over 1,500 yards. So, yeah, I mean, we were both thinking it. Of course, I wanted to put it out there. But JSN, man, you made a great pick there because you are getting what's going to be soon consistency and what's going to be a great targeted player on that offense. DK Metcalf complements him greatly as DK is that physical, tall, fights for the target individual. But JSN he's got a little bit more of the speed. He's going to get targets. I like him in that offense.
You know who his comp was for me coming out?
I want to hear this one.
St. Brown.
He could be, if we're talking about lights, St. Brown light right now. But yeah,
I would love to see it. It's going to take some time.
Yeah. Well,
because like you said, is Geno the answer? Are they going to get a quarterback that's going to sling it like Beyblades, letting it rip? You like that one. I have been impressed with Geno so far, though. It's been very pleasant to see Geno bounce back because he's a guy easy to root for. And I like the deployment of JSN. He's been primarily in the slot, and I think that's where he could feast the most.
It's, I think when you make the comparison to Amon-Ra St. Brown, the more that I think about it, I do have to agree. And the thing is, St. Brown had to earn his spot. He had to earn
He earned it right away.
Where he was in people's heads as a top 5, top tier dynasty wide receiver because he was behind Dyami Brown in his own draft. So, and he still holds the list of everyone who was drafted before him. So, no, I think JSN is a great comp for that. He's really a great player.
Yeah, this is the 2 no. I think I'm one ahead. So this is the 211. Right?
Is this the 212? It might
because you're up.
Okay, have I been?
So you would have been the 3-1. So I think we're up a pick.
Yeah, I think we are. Okay, and this one I was battling back and forth, but I'm gonna take James Cook.
Okay. That's
I was right there with another player, which I'm curious if you're gonna take him next. But I think James Cook has proven he is the RB1 of the team. He started off this year, and people were like, "Why the hell didn't we take James Cook even higher?" But I think you've seen him kind of regress to the median a little bit recently. I think the offense is still struggling to figure out its identity right now, because the first couple of games in the season they were a rush heavy team. And I still see them doing more of that. It'll be interesting to see how some of the rookies fit in, with Ray Davis, with Frank Gore Jr., and I think that's it for the other guys behind James Cook.
Ty Johnson.
That's right, Ty Johnson. Of course, Ty Johnson has also been just more so the beneficiary. He's on multiple of my leagues, just as more so as a throw-in with the James Cook injuries. But it's been great
because he's the PPR
random
back.
touchdowns when he gets them. But James Cook is the RB1 of that team. When he is fully healthy, there's no question about that. It's just, I guess the concerns for him the rest of season are, one, injury, and if they start to change the focus of being a run-heavy team, now getting Amari Cooper if they're going to be a more pass-heavy team.
Yeah, and I do think this does take targets away from him, the Amari Cooper addition, because he is a guy who does benefit from pass catching. I am interested to see if they do get Ray Davis more involved with what we just saw this past week when James Cook is healthy too. So there's a lot of questions around him right now. So I could see why he fell slightly, but he is a very good fantasy option. It's just going to be interesting to see what happens with him. At the 212, I don't feel super confident in this one right now, but he's been my guy. He's been a guy that I have been pumping up. It just hasn't really worked out yet. It's going to be George Pickens at the 212. Yeah, I have to. I see it with him. It's just it's the offense. I think Justin Fields has been surprisingly decent, right, in this offense, but I don't think this offense wants to throw enough, if that makes sense. And I also see some of the effort concerns that's super frustrating, to be honest, because the dude's uber talented, and you could tell when he's not getting the ball, right? He's going to be lackadaisical. If he's not blocking or if he's not the target one, he's going to be doing nothing. And that's frustrating because you have to be your quarterback's best friend because shit breaks down all the time. So they're going to be looking for you at some point. I don't know if Russ changes that. I mean, I've been in the preseason when we all thought Russ was going to be the guy. I kept telling myself George Pickens had top 15 upside. The reason I said that is because we saw a double-digit touchdown year from Cortland Sutton last year, who is a bit older than George Pickens, a fairly good comp to George Pickens. I think George at this point is more explosive than Cortland. So I thought we could see a top 15 upside with George Pickens with Russell Wilson. It'll be interesting to see if they make that change on offense, if that does start to happen.
Yeah. I mean, I bought George Pickens a lot this offseason, just being a believer in what the talent is. I think the prima donna stuff that's so common with talented receivers with Stephon Diggs. Even Chris Olave, even that hasn't come out that he has been overly irate with the offense. I think he has probably some level of that. Just so many receivers that you can name. But the problem is when you put them on the team where they're able to thrive, you don't hear about them anymore, right? So, Stephon Diggs goes to the Buffalo Bills, and at first it's great. You don't hear a lot of it because he is the number one target for Josh Allen. And then things start to sour between the Bills and Stephon Diggs, and then he starts to complain. And, of course, you see him move to the Texans. And it's been interesting since Nico's been hurt because Stephon Diggs has been the beneficiary more so. Tank Dell got involved a little bit this last week. But, I think George Pickens, if he's on the right offense, he's still a top player. But, it's just the unknown from the Steelers right now of not having a competent quarterback that can pass it very well. This weekend will be the first weekend for Russell Wilson. Starting for the Steelers, right? So We'll see if Pickens ends up getting more of an involvement in the offense this week. But I also believe that he is right where you have him, right at the 212, 3-1 in this draft. And it's a lot to do with the talent there. But it's going to be a question of how can the Steelers use him right, and how can they use him in the best way.
Right, exactly. I 100% agree. I'm hoping that my hopes and dreams come to light here soon. But that brings us into the last round, the 3-1. Let's do a little bit of rapid fire. I've already taken a lot of your time.
Okay.
So let's go a little bit of rapid fire here. Who's your 3-1?
Yeah, so I have BTJ, Brian Thomas Jr.
Okay. Yeah, this is a good one here. I like that. At the 3-2, I am going to take Bucky fucking Irving.
Ooh.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers running back.
I didn't even have him on my list. But
really?
Yeah, that I guess we'll be quick about it. But yeah, I didn't have him on my list. I actually probably could have.
Forgotten, or was he?
Kind
you
of
don't think
forgot
he
him.
belongs in this tier? Okay, fair enough. I think he's shown me this season he's an NFL running back so
Yeah.
far. Much better between the tackles than Rachaad White. A good pass catcher, competent blocker. I don't think that's his strong suit. He's looked better than I imagined, but I think the Bucs have something there in him. 3-3 for you.
So I'm going to take Jameson Williams here. I think this is the part where I bite into it. Yeah, I believe in everything that he's showing right now, but he's just got to show more.
So at the 3-4, I'm going to go with my guy again from this past class, and that's going to be Xavier Worthy. Right now, he's the gadget guy, and we saw this kind of last year with Rashee Rice. So that's possibly what the Chiefs like to do. And I think he's a much better route runner than they've given him so far. So I'm going to go with Xavier Worthy here.
Okay. I'm going to go, we're at 3-5, 3-6, 3-5. Yep. I'm going to go with Jonathan Brooks.
That's where I was going to go if I didn't go Worthy.
RB1 of this class, and I think when he is going to be put back on the field, he will take over that Panthers timeshare.
I 100% agree. We kind of talked about it a little earlier. At the 3-6, I am going to go Tank Dell. I really like Tank. I was a seller this offseason because of Stephon Diggs, but that Stephon Diggs deal is only 1 year, and I think he's Stroud's guy going forward.
Yeah, I like the pick. Let's see, at 3-7, I will take Jordan Addison. I think
that was another one I have in this area.
He's still the wide receiver 2 of the team behind Jefferson, but he just goes undervalued.
Agreed. I will go here at the 3-8. Guy maybe we probably could have taken earlier. I kind of comp him to a Zay Flowers-esque guy who could finish as your wide receiver 2 every single year. It's going to be Ladd McConkey.
Yeah, that was up there who I had next. Yeah, honestly, I'm kind of pulling a little bit of I'm pulling an audible on this one because the guy I could have picked next, well, I'm going to go with the guy I believe in more, and that's Trey Benson. I
like it. Yeah, he's here for me too.
Yeah, he takes over eventually after James Conner's done this, whether it's this season or it starts to go next season. But I was going to pick Rachaad White, but I don't believe in Rachaad White anymore.
Welcome to the club, my friend. With the 3-10, I am going to go maybe a little bit off the board here. I don't know if you'll have him, and that's going to be Michael Penix.
That's off my board, but I also I had left him off mainly because of right now everything with Kirk. He's going to eventually get the opportunity probably to step in, though.
Yeah, I think with this Atlanta offense and the way Kirk and Penix kind of almost complement each other, he slides right in, hopefully. 3-11.
Okay, so I'm going to take Xavier Legette as far as...
I love it.
Yeah, just pure physical prospect, and I think that he's going to do well with the Panthers.
I agree. I like this pick a lot. He has shown So promise so far. One of the plays 2 weeks ago, he had a touchdown in the red zone. Kept the play alive for his quarterback, and that's something you want to see from a rookie wide receiver. I like Leggett. I like this pick. With the final pick of this 3-round combined draft, a lot of choices. A lot of choices. I'm going to go with a guy we haven't seen. He's probably not even on your board. And it's going to be Marshawn Lloyd. He was my running back 3 of the class. I can see DeAndre Swift-esque type running from him, and I think he's a better in between the tackles runner than DeAndre Swift. So I'm interested to see what happens with Lloyd's back healthy. We only got a small sample size before he got hurt. The things we saw were okay, but I like Marshawn Lloyd a lot. He was a 3rd-round pick, so that's usually a pretty good spot to take running backs.
Yeah. I think that's a great draft. Any honorable mentions?
Yes. So I think for me, some honorable mentions. I'll give 2. We'll go with Romeo Doubs as 1.
Yeah.
Maybe a pick or 2 later. Wow. I actually didn't even. I have him in my rankings, but I didn't have him on my board. I don't know why. Isaiah Pacheco.
It's a great pick. Yeah, actually.
Especially at this point. Who do you have any honorables?
Keon Coleman, we talked about earlier.
That's
some concerns there, but I think he's definitely a great prospect and great guy to keep an eye on. And then somebody who I think he's still kind of down there, but Wan'Dale Robinson.
I fucking love that you said that. Thank you. I have been a big Wan'Dale guy. He wasn't even. I don't even know why. So last week I've talked about him the past 2 fucking episodes, and I didn't even think to put him in this one. Thank you.
I had to drop the honorable mention. So.
Yeah. Actually, there's one guy I'm surprised you didn't mention at all. It's a Michigan player.
Roman Wilson?
Nope.
Ooh.
JJ McCarthy.
JJ, I think we've forgotten a lot about him with the injury. But I am interested. I have him in one league. I'm still happy with this because I ended up trading JJ McCarthy for Jared Goff in the 3rd. And
that's beautiful
I had to get away
work.
With that. And that was right before the injury. It was whew. But yeah, I mean JJ, knowing what he can do with the ball, he has the accuracy. He is efficient with the ball. He's smart. He also, I think there's something about him, that we as Michigan fans kind of know through his time here. But he is extremely forward about his mental health and being really centered on the field, being kind of really separating himself. He is not drama. He is nowhere near what close to what George Pickens is, but he is a competitor on the field.
I 1000% agree. He is a competitor. I was lower on him, but you see the grit a bit in JJ. I just did that rhyme and I didn't even mean to do it. But that'll be it for this episode. I'm sorry I kept you so long. This went a little longer than I imagined, but when I start chopping it up with people I respect and have so much knowledge as yourself, I don't mind keeping it going.
Mike, it wasn't even a thing to me. I enjoyed the time. I'm excited for those that will get to listen to it here soon.
Yeah, and if you hate any of our picks, if you want to tell me I suck, feel free to leave comments, reviews, or anything like that on this podcast. Again, I want to thank Ben McCown of the Dynasty DNA for jumping on with me. It was a really fun episode. Really, really mind fucking, to be honest with you, with how much top quality players we have in this draft. But that'll be it for the Dynasty Dogs, and we will see you guys next week. Have a good night.